Thank you for those words of welcome. And to your dismay, sir, I will not sing today, but I have chosen this line. I hope you can see and you hear me. Quoting a hymn as mentioned, which was sung at one of the funeral services of the Queen, the late Queen Elizabeth. And in that there is one line which says, "Change and decay in all around I see." Quite a interesting and very popular hymn among Anglicans, yes. And I believe that is the reason for this. I'm talking about the aging process. And if I may take another quotation from Olivia Colman, who portrayed Queen in the series Crown in season 3 and 4. She says, "Age is rarely kind to anyone. Nothing one can do about it. One just has to get on with it." So we know from Shakespeare that all the world's a stage and we all are mere players. We have our entrances and our exits, and we have many parts to play in succession. And from history, we know that there have been records of oldest humans. So if you take the Judeo-Christian tradition, there is an account of a person called Methuselah who was 969 years of age. Of course, in scientific material and in recorded history, we have two individuals known as Jean Carment, who was 122 years old, the oldest recorded female on Earth. And also this gentleman, Japanese gentleman, Mr. Kimura, who was 116 years old when he passed away. Japan being a very important country with regards to super geriatric population, super centenarians, if I may say. And we know that the world is aging, like the song, the popular song, which says, "Day by day, the world is aging." And we know that 2/3, majority of that world lives in the developing region, and we are one of them. So this is our country, and we see that our current life expectancy stands at around 77 years. And it is projected by the end of this century that it will go up to even close upon 90. So our population is getting changed day by day. We are having a reverse or inverted pyramid, and now the inverted pyramid is almost becoming like a cylinder. So in 2 decades, we know that 1 out of every 4 Sri Lankans will be over the age of 65 years. So what? As an academic, as a medical teacher, I just thought about this. Geriatrics was never taught in medical school. Was it or wasn't it? So it was not actively taught, it was not a part of the written or recommended or tested curriculum. But indeed, it was a hidden curriculum, part of the hidden curriculum, learned curriculum as well. So why is this? It's not so popular, it's not exciting, it's not lucrative, and it doesn't have much exposure. And in fact, there is a systematic review, which is published in BMC Medical Education, which has quoted about these things, why medical students do not choose a career in geriatrics. And these are the 3 reasons that have been attributed. It's that it's not exciting, it's not lucrative, and it lacks exposure. Of course, now we see that there is a lot of exposure with regards to clinical material. So our plan is to talk about the gerontological basis of aging, to touch upon the implications of aging, talk about the life course approach of managing aging, and to also visit a little bit about breakthroughs in reversing. Geriatrics comes from the word, Greek word geras. Geras was a Greek god who was the god of old age and senility. The Roman equivalent of this was senectus, from which we get the word senile. And if you go beyond geriatrics, there is an area of study which is called gerontology, which is the study of aging and of older adults. It goes beyond medicine into the realms of socio-cultural, psychological, and biological aspects. Of course, this we know, geriatrics. So it is related to the treatment or therapeutics. And it's a new specialty. It's a new specialty which is coined by Ignaz Nasher, which means senility in a distinct period of life, a physiological entity as much as a period of childhood. And it's considered as she is considered as the mother of geriatrics in United Kingdom, Marjorie Warren, who said geriatrics needs to prevent disease whenever it is possible, to reduce medical disability to the bare minimum, to ascertain and to maintain independence, and more importantly, to teach the patient to adjust himself intelligently to manage his residual disability. Of course, this is a disclaimer. This is the first time that I learned about geriatrics in my childhood. That is through this character called as Geriatrics in the famous Asterix comic series. And we see that geriatrics is part and parcel of our society. So aging is a pattern of life that grows when one grows older. And it is a process of change that occurs over a time period associated with gradual decline. And what does it give rise to? It gives rise to failure that comes from injury, as illness, and as death. So there is increased impairment of psychological as well as physiological functions, and it is multi-domain, as we would talk about later. So all physiological functions lose efficiency and lose the capacity to maintain the homeostasis. Of course, it happens at different rates. Some have it explicitly shown, some are concealed. If you look at these three individuals, you would see that the late queen, this was when she was around 92 years of age, governed many countries, was the longest serving monarch in the world. On your extreme right, you have Stephen Hawking, who was confined to a wheelchair from the age of 27, died at the age of 70, being confined to a wheelchair for 50 years. You see, although the ages are different, their biological ages are not in par with it. You may ask who the person in the middle is. You would be surprised to know that this is a 13-year-old individual who has a syndrome called progeria. So we'll talk about that. So there is no there is discrepancy between the chronological age and biological age, and this is something that we need to warn about. Aging and multimorbidity, yes, as one age, the independent risk for chronic diseases rise, and it becomes multifactorial. And the complexity of care of the older adult increases, may be just simply giving medication, giving therapeutics, taking care of the person, and also managing legal and social issues as well. There is a concept called compression of morbidity, where with this advancement of medicine, the technology, where would we see that there is life extension, but with life extension, are we increasing the period of that purple color area, where we increase the life extension without reducing morbidity? Or are we trying to compress the morbidity, although we keep the life expectancy static? Or what is needed? Do we increase the lifespan with compression of the purple zone, which is called compression of morbidity with increasing the life? So aging is universal. It is inevitable to all organisms, all species. It occurs intrinsically. It occurs by nature within the person. It is progressive and cumulative. It adds on and it gives rise to more and more complexities, and it gives rise to harm. This is the subtleness, the fragility of life that we learn from our great faiths. So who is old? Usually a person who is more than 65 years of age is considered as old, but from a gerontological point of view, although there are no definitions, these are sort of the age groups that are considered. Young old as somebody who's between 65 and 74 years of age, middle old as in 75 to 85, and certainly old, more than 85. And certainly now there are super centenarians. So there is a intrinsic capacity where it is a combination of physical and mental capacity, and it declines with aging because of the process. And the decline, as I mentioned as before, it is variable among people. The decline of intrinsic capacity is greater among older people than younger person. And this discrepancy of decline is the hallmark of aging. So there are 5 domains. I promised you about talking of these domains. There are 5 domains in intrinsic capacity. They include cognition, the ability, the higher functions of problem solving, intelligence, memory. Our mobility, whether we are able to maintain balance, our muscle strength and gait, our vitality, metabolism, as well as how hormones interplay and how our cardiorespiratory and even renal functions and hepatic functions function. Psychological with emotions and mood, and also vision and hearing as sensory. So we'll revisit that again later on, but I go on with some theories of aging. There are some concepts of theories of aging. These include the program theory, where every person has a biological clock. It ticks and ticks and ticks the day that we are born, and it is predetermined only to somebody who is above. And it is predictable when it gives rise to certain changes, like thymic atrophy, when menopause sets in, when there are skin changes. And it evolves to remove old animals from the society, from the community, so that the newer ones, the younger ones, have increased resources for consumption. There is a concept called the Hayflick effect or Hayflick limit. As you can remember your genetics, there is a thing called the telomeres, which are the ends, the aglets of the chromosome, which deplete as one chromosome replicates in mitosis. And as you see, these corners deplete as one age, and people have conceptualized that this leads into senescence and leads into dormancy. So at one particular time of life, as an example, like human fibroblasts, they will not further replicate, and therefore it will stop. There is a concept called cell senescence, where the older cells release immunological active chemicals which are pro-inflammatory, including interleukins 1, 6, chemokines, tumor growth factors, etc. And it communicates to nearby cells to warn of stress. Of course, immunity is not so efficient in older years, and therefore inflammatory response get overrun, and then therefore it gives rise to a stage called inflammaging. There is also damage, and this damage accumulates in the body. Damage that occurs because of free radicals because of oxidation, glycosylation, which gets accumulated as one advances in age, and it gives rise to inflammatory effects. The free radical theory, where certain toxins as well as radiation make changes in our mitochondria, our DNA, and our cell membranes, etc., and proteins. This leads to the wear and tear of cells. There's a theory called the Disposable Soma theory, where there is a delicate balance between maintenance repair on one side and growth and reproduction. All of us are born with a certain amount of energy in life, and we have to budget it out between reproduction and soma maintenance. And in this theory, it says if one uses more energy or potential in growth and reproduction, therefore, at the later stages, maintenance and repair can get halted and aging can be affected. The Soma theory has led to a theory called the mutation accumulation theory, where DNA mutation, as we discussed in the free radical theory and the accumulation theory, gets added on, and as one age, by evolution, there is no corrective mechanism to remove it. So it gets stopped there, and the individual or the animal gets exposed to the effects of age. The antagonistic pleiotrophy effect is one where it says one particular gene which may affect in two different ways. Whereas in the younger phase, it may cause a useful effect in reproduction, as in sex hormones, but we see as sex hormones later on in life can cause carcinogenic manifestation. Same with the P53 gene, which is a cancer preventer gene. There are also these progerioid syndromes, which are mutations, which are inherited, and very rarely you encounter them. When I was working in the United Kingdom in Cambridge, I came across these in the geriatric clinic, where they have accelerated aging, sometimes even during puberty or even in young adulthood. So these are two of the examples that are there. And from that, I remind you about these movies, which was acted by the father-son duo, the Bachchans. And also this beautiful movie of Benjamin Button, where there is reversed aging, something for you to ponder about. You would think that natural selection and aging is always associated with negligible or negative effects on aging, but not so. There are some certain theories which says that it is very useful. The grandmother hypothesis is what is described in our culture as the LLB phenomenon, or lamainge lamai bala ganime phenomenon, where the grandparents have a role in taking care of their children, and that is a resource and capacity building for the younglings. There is also another theory called adaptive senectitude, where there are some traits that have been harmful in younger individuals seems to be associated with greater survival in old age. For instance, older person who develops obesity, hypertension, and oxidative stress may endure it well compared to that of a younger person who develops all of this. So these are some of them. Of course, there are some psychological theories like the Jungian theory, where midlife point crisis is considered, where at some particular point of life, there is questioning about decisions and choices, whether they have been right, and successful aging includes acceptance and valuing these without regarding to the others. Activity theory is something that is welcome always, where activity is necessary for successful aging. Our elders need to be engaged activity, and purposeful activity and interaction promote self-esteem and satisfaction. Disengagement theory is the the total opposite of this, where there is withdrawal from customary roles with aging, and the individual becomes more introspective and self-focused. And it is considered as a benefit for society because the newer ones, the younglings, are given the chance to benefit for the society. So we move on to a thing called geriatric giants, from I's to M's. Any person who is interested in geriatrics know about these geriatric giants. Today, Dr. Kobelgam, we discuss about this polypharmacy, where there is iatrogenesis, also the other things about instability, immobility, incontinence, and that has now changed over to the 5 M's, where we talk about the mind, mobilization, medication, and multi-complexity. And out of that, there's an interesting component called frailty, where there's vulnerability of individuals with dependency and mortality when exposed to stressors. And there are several domains. So you see that one who is frail, who is weak, as we say in Sinhala, dubala, when it takes a longer time and a longer level of energy and resources needed to come to a similar level as that person used to be. And when somebody is severely frail, they go beyond the level of the normalcy, and they become more and more dependent, as you see in severe frailty. So there are various ways of detecting the frailty phenotype. The fried frailty phenotype, which talks about weight loss, exhaustion, the gait of speed, the weak grip and low energy. And also the where we talk about the 9 stages, a pictorial way of detecting frailty. And we have at the moment validated this thing called the FIND questionnaire, which is a self-reported way of detecting frail, non-disabled disabilities in older people, and it is currently awaiting publication. So you see that these are things that you need to be more sensitive to when you are treating your loved ones. Comprehensive geriatric assessment is essential, where we talk about the main domains, the physical, mental, psychological, social issues, where we all sit together. The doctor is not the only person who comes into the treatment team, but we take the nurse, the therapist, the social worker, more importantly, the patient and the caregiver. We all come into a table, or we come into discussion, and we make a decision for the patient, for the benefit of the patient. This is an essential thing that we need to practice. Healthy aging is a process where functional ability enables the well-being of the older adult, and the WHO has gone into town about this, making people able about meeting their basic needs, about learning how to grow and making decisions, and to be mobile, and finally to contribute to society. So the functional ability, which we discussed at the beginning, comes into play. The intrinsic capacity as well as the environmental factors need to be focused upon. And how do we do that? You see that somebody who is at a middle age, as one age ages, the intrinsic capacity declines, and there is significant loss of capacity in the extremes of life. So, and so does the functional ability, what we assess through the Bartle scale, the instruments of activities of daily living, etc. So our health services need to address these chronic conditions. We need to slow them so that the capacity in the loss of capacity is reduced, and we need to manage the chronic conditions. Our long-term care, we need to support these behaviors and ensure a dignified life. Take the patient as an individual and make an individualized plan as to what we need to do. And our environment needs to be changed so that capacity enhancing behaviors can be taken into account and the barriers are removed. So what do? We raise this curve higher up. We raise the functional ability as well as the intrinsic capacity higher up. So is Sri Lanka of demographic transformation? We are at a crisis with our economy. The cost of pensions and salaries are quite debatable and questionable. The cost of healthcare is massive and it's getting huge day by day. The demands for social services increase. Of course, we don't see any accelerated growth in social services. The demand for young family members to take care of these elderly people is going up. And now we are facing another issue, brain drain. Brain drain as well as lonely elders. So this is the face that you would see on Skype or on WhatsApp when there are lonely elderly parents, loved ones, not just when they migrate, maybe even in our day-to-day life when we are far away from our loved ones, not just physically, but also mentally. So there is a decade of healthy aging that has been declared, where an opportunity to bring together governments and all individuals in the country, the stakeholders have to come into one table and to improve the lives of older persons. This is in writing, but we need to change our policies as well. We have an existing national elderly health policy. We need to change. We need to address all these new challenges in the wake of COVID, in the wake of our economic problems, in the wake of our brain. Little bit about delaying aging and extending lifespan. Time immemorial, we know that people have been looking out for increasing their lifespan. Juan Ponce de Leon was in search of the fountain of youth. In Greece, the philosophers were talking about ambrosia. In our own part of the world, we were talking about the Amrit or the Amrita, and we are still searching. So there are some studies about caloric restriction, where caloric restriction without reducing without malnutrition has anti-inflammatory effects. And indeed, this is seen in the Okinawa island cohort, where there is the highest prevalence of centenarians in Japan, as I described before. And caloric restriction, or in the form of alternative day fasting, or 5 days to 2 days intermittent fasting, and 48 hours diet, twice a month diet, which has shown some scientific breakthrough. But of course, because there are drugs that have possible potential in increasing span. Drugs which work on the SIRT1 gene as well as the AMPK gene, which are anti-aging, as well as drugs which act on the mTOR gene, which is pro-aging. And out of these, there are 4 drugs that have been described: the resveratrol, which is found in grapes and red wine. Hence, there is a notion about wine reducing cardiometabolic risks. There are also studies on rapamycin, spermidine, and also about our own metformin being a useful drug. Exercise indeed has shown to be associated with reducing aging, and indeed exercise of 150 minutes per week of moderate intensity aerobic activity has been shown to be useful. And this includes muscle strengthening activity as well to improve the vitality. There is a phenomenon called hormesis, which is being studied more and more, where one talks about the paradoxical protective effects of low-dose stressors and toxins. And see that small doses, small frequent doses of stress has shown to precondition resistance to higher levels. And as Nietzsche, the German philosopher, says, that which does not kill us, it makes us strong. So our lives are up to 70 years. And if we reason by strength, we increase it, it's labor and sorrow, and we all fly away. And this is the picture says is all. We as clinicians, we are merely there to improve life. We are not there, we are just delaying life, exit, we are delaying death, but we need to consider about improving life as in quality of life. And I end with this Oscar Wilde's famous novel Picture of Dorian Gray, which is about an individual who exposes himself to vices, and his portrait, how it changes from a youthful image into one that of an older, haggard person because of vices. Sin, not only theological, but sin as in our qualities, our moralities, our behavior, etc. And if a wretched man has a vice, it shows itself in the lines of his mouth, the droop of his eyelids, the moldings of his hands, even. Thank you.